Hey y'all, it's Take 'em to Detroit here. Today we're going to talk about the WNBA Rookie of the Year race. So, as you can tell by this image here, our top two competitors are Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, and today I want to do a bit of an in-depth dive to give you guys a good idea of where I think the the race is going and who I think is number one, who I think is number two, and some pretty good non-biased reasonings for why, including, some positives, negatives, and we'll go over the criteria in a sec. But before that, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. Take the like button to Detroit. Happens there. No further explanation needed. So the criteria that I'm using to evaluate these rookies is a mixture of team impact and individual performance because when you look at the two, they play different positions and completely different play styles. So I don't want to hurt Angel Reese's case just because of her role on the team, whereas Caitlin Clark is running the offense, so she has more burden offensively. So while that does elevate her a little bit, I don't want to just completely discount Angel Reese because of that. So I want to balance for that a little. And then I also want to, you know, see how they're doing for their role in particular, and then take a look at the team situations that each of them are in too. So if we first start by taking a look at Caitlin Clark here, she averaging 17.1 points, almost 6 rebounds, 8.2 assists, shooting 40% from the field, a little bit over that, and 32.7% from three, and 89% from the free throw line. Then if we go down and we take a look at and then the stuff that I want to highlight here is that Caitlin Clark, her uh, points per game and assists per game are really, really high. She's almost averaging a double double in points and kind of crazy and really, really hard to do in the WNBA because when you think about the NBA, it might not be as difficult, but they're also running 48 minutes a game, not 40-minute a game games. So it's a lot more impressive to have that 8 assist number when they have shorter games. And also really, really good free throw percentage. And then a lot of people are harping on her for her field goal percentage, but if we take a look at her effective field goal percentage, which is what's going to take into account the 3-point shot being worth a lot more than the 2-point shot, we see her effective field goal percentage is actually pretty good at almost 51%. And that's because she's jacking up like 8 threes a game. So she's actually a lot more efficient than most people would think, even though the efficiency can definitely be improved. And I think we saw a lot of that in like her most recent outing against the Wings, where even though she didn't shoot super great from the three, when she was driving, she was making it. She was like 8 of 10 on drives. Now let's take a look at Angel Reese, okay? And the stats that I want to outline here for Angel Reese are her points and her rebounds. 13 and a half points and almost 12 rebounds a game. Angel Reese is by far the best offensive rebounder in the WNBA. Not sure it's super close. And, you know, her offensive rebounding has the ability to turn into points. Because even though, if we look at her field goal percentage and her effective field goal percentage, they are very, very low, especially for the position she plays. A lot of the boards that she's getting are turning into points. So, in my mind, the way that I think about it, we can discount a little bit of the offensive rebounding because off of misses, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I mean, I think it is still a great thing that she is able to rebound her own misses because I would much rather have that if I was a GM or a coach or something like that. I'd much rather have somebody with the ability to grab boards off their own misses and recognize when it goes up if it's going to go in or not and be able to grab their own misses than somebody who just misses and can't grab those. And then when we look at the offensive rebounding leaders, now this is from the Sporting News, and this graphic is by Stephen No, and he did a deep dive into like who in the league in offensive rebounding, and then a bit of a dive as well into how many are off of their own misses. And basically, what he found is that Angel Reese has 34 offensive rebounds on her own misses, which is kind of crazy because that's like a third of them. But I mean, even without those, she's actually still, 63, uh, 63 offensive rebounds off teammate misses, which would still lead the WNBA regardless of whether or not you include other people's offensive reboundings off their own misses. But it is worth noting that she does do this about twice as much as anybody else, if not more than that. But I mean, even without that, she's still a really, really good offensive rebounder, and I think it shows like the effort that she puts into a lot of her plays. I think that's like probably the biggest knock on her is that she's not a good shooter. So some of the rebounds that she has just wouldn't exist if she was like an actually good shooter or just an average shooter at all. Now, the biggest knock on Caitlin Clark is obviously going to be her turnovers. She's 2 turnovers per game clear of anybody else on the league, and she's already set the turnover record for, I think, the history of the WNBA. But when you watch these games closely, you'll notice that kind of like how the stats can be misleading for Angel Reese, where it's like, okay, she's averaging 12 boards a game, but like 1.5 of those is her own misses. Yeah, Caitlin Clark's averaging 5.5 turnovers a game, but like a lot of these are not her fault. And the same could be said about some of the turnovers for some of these other people. But if you think about the situation that she's in, a lot of her teammates aren't that used to playing with her. And when you watch a lot of the specific plays that these turnovers are occurring on, a lot of it's, oh, she makes a crazy pass and her teammate fumbles it, or it's like a miscommunication between, okay, when you set the pick, I want you to roll out and down to the basket, but then they roll out up to the 3-point line or like along the 3-point line, and it's a miscommunication, and then you never see that doesn't really show up on the stat sheet, and I think that that's a big part of it. So I think that while Caitlin Clark does lead the league in turnovers, her assists and court vision, I think, more than make up for the detriment that it is. Now, when we look at Angel Reese as a player, right? What has she done this season? She has the most consecutive double doubles in WNBA history. She's averaging a double double and is number one in offensive rebounding. Now, I think as we've just gone over, the number one in offensive rebounding thing is very legit. And when you watch the games, she's a great offensive rebounder. Now, with the other stuff, the averaging a double double thing, or the double double streak. I don't think that that is very important, and I think that in my mind it is almost a negative. And the reason that I say that is that especially towards the end of that streak, Angel Reese's double double streak was hurting her team, where Angel Reese, you could tell, was kind of in it for her own reasons and not necessarily trying to win the game, if that makes sense. Even though a lot of what she was doing was positively impacting her team. So I don't think it takes away from it too much, but I just think it's to note that like double doubles are really just a made up stat. It's just going from 9 points, 9 rebounds to 10 points, 10 rebounds, or something like that. Like, does the extra point or the extra rebound really mean anything? Not really, and I think that's why we see like a lot of players end with like 10 points, 10 rebounds exactly, and then stop because they're just doing it to get to the milestone. And I think we see that a little bit in her stats, especially on the points end, where it'll be like, I'm at 8 points, I need 2 more. Hey, give me the ball with 5 seconds left to try and score here. And we saw that a couple times, and I think that it's not a great look, but I think it just shows how arbitrary some of the stats can be. And if we look at the negatives of her game, she is the most blocked WNBA player ever. I think she's been blocked like around 50 times this season. So like twice per game she's getting blocked. She has zero offensive bag, and I mean literally zero. Like when she is under the basket with the ball, she is the equivalent of me from the 3-point line. Like just chucking up hopes and dreams at the basket, you know? But because of her offensive rebounding ability, she can afford to do that to a degree. But I mean, it is the biggest negative and the biggest knock on her is her lack of an offensive game. Like all of her shots are from within 5 feet, and she's making like 5% of those or something like that. And then she's also a mediocre free throw shooter. I mean, she shoots like 75% from the free throw line. It's not that bad, not that good, but it's worth noting. It's not like no, I don't really have a mediocre section, and it's not a good thing really. So just a mid free throw shooter. Moving on to Caitlin Clark. Again, a bit arbitrary here, but she's the first ever rookie with a triple double in WNBA history. Now, this I think is less arbitrary than the streak, um, just because the triple double wasn't like 10, 10, and 10. There was a little bit of cushion on the underside for the rebounds and assists, and obviously the points. But so I think that it makes it a little bit more legit in my mind that it wasn't like any last second padding for that. Now, obviously, once you get close, if you're close in like the third quarter, you're still going to be looking for it. It's not quite the same as like in the last 20 seconds. She is number one in assists in the WNBA, despite being number one in turnovers. They kind of go hand in hand. You're passing the ball a lot, you're going to turn it over a lot, but you're also going to get a lot of assists. It's just like in baseball. You swing a lot, you're gonna get a lot of strikeouts. Like I think Ricky Anderson, strikeout leaders in baseball history, like same kind of thing. She's number one in point contribution in the WNBA, and I think forever for a rookie. I think she just passed Breonna Stewart for most point contributions in a season ever. And also, just recently, the WNBA record for assists in that Dallas Wings game. She had 19 assists, which is just an absolutely absurd amount. Connection between her and Aaliyah Boston that is the Fever offense, and I think without Caitlin Clark, when she's not touching the ball, Fever just don't really do much of anything on offense. And when you actually look at the stats, she is creating almost all of her own offense. You know, she like compared to other WNBA players, she has the highest percent of her own twos and threes unassisted. So most not most of, but a large chunk of her 3-point shots are her creating her own offense. That's a little bit misleading because some of it might be coming off a screen. That's not an assist, but a lot of it is unassisted for her more than anybody else in the WNBA. And same, I believe, with her 2-point shooting. The 2-point shooting, I'm not 100% sure on, but I am about the 3-point shooting. So she is like creating her own offense and creating her entire team's offense as well. Look at the negatives. Most turnovers in the WNBA. You know, I said earlier a lot of it's miscommunication. A lot of it could be her teammates fumbling the ball with butter on their fingers. But I mean, 5.5 turnovers a game is 5.5 turnovers a game. And when you look at the games, every time she has like a 6 turnover game, you could argue that maybe like 2 or 3 are her teammates' fault, but you know 3 or 4 of them are her fault, or 2 or 3 or 4 of them are her fault. So she does need to get a little bit better with protecting the ball sometimes, because sometimes I think she gets frustrated or trapped and just kind of yeets it into some fans' Coca-Cola. So I think that she could definitely still do better on the turnover front. And in my mind, the biggest knock on her, from my perspective, isn't the turnovers. I think those are more than made up for by her assists, and it's really overblown. I think it's the fact that she has bad defense. Not a good defender. She does not come over screens well. She gives up on plays sometimes. I think she could definitely work on her defensive effort and her defensive skills. And that could really make her a better player. But yeah, I mean, as of right now, she gives like that's something that could definitely be improved. The other negative, I don't think this is really her fault, is that she has a poor relationship with a coach. Christy Sides is one of the worst coaches I've ever seen. Trying to sabotage her own team, you know? They have a pretty poor relationship, so I think that hurts the team overall. But I don't... the coaches, let's take a look at the coaches. Chicago Sky, they have Teresa Weatherspoon, and the Indiana Fever have Christy Siles. Now, I think that this is really where the difference in the Rookie of the Year race becomes clear, because in my eyes, Teresa Weatherspoon, when I watch the Chicago Sky play, is trying to enable some of this quote unquote stat padding, you could say, that we see from Angel Reese, because I think she thinks that it's gonna her odds at Coach of the Year. But regardless, I think she's out to help Angel Reese in the end, and I think she's trying to really help Angel Reese and increase her impact, playing her more minutes, putting her in better positions to do what she does best. And I think that Christy Sides is kind of doing the opposite, where she takes the ball out of Clark's hands too much, and the play designs are wonky. A lot of the plays Clark gives it up, she doesn't get it back ever. It goes into somebody like Erica Wheeler's hands or something like that, who has blinders on it, who never makes it back. And I think that Christy Sides is probably the number one defender in the league. Look at who's the best at stopping Caitlin Clark. I think that this is really where the difference is made for me, is that on one end we see Teresa Weatherspoon helping Angel Reese, and on the other end we see Christy Sides hurting Caitlin Clark. If we look at the surrounding cast, this is the Fever roster. I think the biggest things to point out on the Fever roster are Aaliyah Boston. So you're Caitlin Clark and then Aaliyah Boston, um, and that's probably the biggest person to point out. There's Nalissa Smith, Christy Wallace, Erica Wheeler, and then on the bench, you got Demiris Dantes, Lexi Hall coming off the bench. But, you know, the surrounding cast is really Aaliyah Boston and some bums. Not, they're not really that great. And I think that it's important to note that they did trade their best defender, Celeste Taylor. So they are a very, very bad defensive team. Like Aaliyah Boston plays a bit undersized, but Lexi Hall plays with a ton of effort and is a very capable defender, just not very good on offense. As you can see, there's not a lot of playmakers on this team, not a lot of people who are great passers or great defenders, but they're good role players. I think that there's a team of role players, and that Caitlin Clark is really like power to the machine, and without her, I don't think it really operates because they don't really have anybody to replace her role. Now we look at the Sky roster, the surrounding cast for Angel Reese. There's Camila Cardozo and Kennedy Carter, I think, are the important people. Now there's Diamond DeShields, there's Onyewere, people like that. But I think that Kennedy Carter and Camila Cardozo are the two important people to note here. Um, and one person that you might notice is missing is Marina Mabry, because she was actually just recently traded to the Connecticut, not here. And I think that's a big Chicago Sky. Like, it's almost like, yo, are you trying to tank right now, kind of thing? Because now this roster has zero shooters. This roster shoots like me. This roster cannot shoot the three ball at all. But I think at the end of the day, they have Kennedy Carter, who's one of the best scorers in the league right now. She's on a crazy tear, especially recently. I think she's one of the fastest guards in the league. One of the best scorers in the league. Like, I think she's 12th in the league in points. So she's like, and Caitlin Clark is 13th. So she's like just ahead of her in points, but she is a crazy spark plug. Like she is one of the best point guards in the league right now. And I think that when we look at the surrounding cast, I'd say the Skies is maybe just a little bit better before they get rid of Marina Mabrey, but they're pretty even, if not the Chicago Sky being a little bit worse after that. But I'd say they're pretty even roster wise. And you can see that into the standings where they're neck and neck almost in the standings. But yeah, just to give an idea of the situation that they're surrounding themselves with, I think that Angel Reese's position on the Chicago Sky could really be filled by other, I don't want to call them role players, but like role players where they wouldn't be able to do the job as well as her, but you really wouldn't feel the difference as much if you were to replace Angel Reese with like I don't know, let's say like just some other rebounding big, you know? But I really just don't even think the Fever's offense would work at all. Like they wouldn't score any points at all without Kalen Clark. So, you know, when we go from here, I mean, we have to think about who the rookie of the year is, and in my eyes, the rookie of the year got to be Caitlin Clark. I think for the reasons I outlined, uh, she is the entire Fever offense, and I don't want to take that away from Angel Reese, where she's not asked to do as much, but Caitlin Clark is asked to do more, and I think she over delivers, where she creates for everybody else, and then also has to create for herself. There is nobody who can create for her, and I think that's the big difference. Is that she's able to separate herself on the offensive end, where she is a more prolific scorer. She's better at handling the ball, better at dishing the ball out, and is still like a pretty good rebounder in her own right. She's averaging almost 6 a game, and a lot of that is because of the way she's able to space the floor and how lethal she is in transition. That a lot of people aren't crowding the glass as much because they realize that they need to get back on defense to kind of cover the transition game. So I think that her effect on the game is kind of crazy, just a little bit higher than Angel Reese's, and I don't really think it's a debate who the rookie of the year is. I think that her impact is one of the highest in the league. I mean, obviously she's not MVP over Asia Wilson or anything like that, but I think she's probably top three, top five at her position right now. With the person that I could say confidently being above her would be like Sabrina Ionescu or something like that. But I mean, she is top of the league at her position, and you could argue she's like top 10 in the league right now, just in general, regardless of position. But in the role that she fills, she is as a rookie the best ever in the role that she fills of like the scoring uh, opportunity creating guard. That's not to take away from Angel Reese. I think she's had a great season. Any other year, she'd be rookie of the year. Just not this year, you know? Maybe not any other year she'd be rookie of the year, but any other year she's a top rookie of the year candidate. Most of the year she could be rookie of the year. Just not this year because Caitlin Clark is having a historic season, and so is Angel Reese, just not at the same level. So in my eyes, the comparison is Angel Reese is, Magic Johnson or sorry, Caitlin Clark is Magic Johnson, and Angel Reese is maybe like Dennis Rodman or something like that. So that's where my rookie of the year race is, and I think that Angel Reese would need to do better at shooting the ball to kind of close the gap, but I don't really think there is any gap closing to be had. So Caitlin Clark is my rookie of the year. Thank you guys for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe, and follow me for any vids in the future, and drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think and what you guys think I should talk about in the future. I'll talk WNBA, NBA, NFL, a little bit of gambling here and there maybe, MLB, other sports, So yeah, let me know. Thank you guys for watching.